Hey everybody, welcome to Fatso Radio, episode number 66. Tonight I have a special guest, Damian Lucenda. Damian and I go way back to elementary school, past high school, way back to elementary school in Sault Ste. Marie. Great guy, comes from a great family, great big family. We have a lot in common, of course, over the years. We have some real discussion. We have a real discussion with some really heavy topics. We talk about guns, we talk about death, we talk about freedom, we talk about security, all of that stuff. So put your hands together for him. But before you do that, don't forget to check out volpemartialarts.com. KW, that's Kitchener-Waterloo, and even Guelph and Cambridge, hottest, newest Kung Fu and Hapkido martial arts school in the region. Check them out, volpemartialarts.com. Also, they are offering a 2-week trial right now, so check them out and see that. This episode is also brought to you by papaearth.ca, so don't forget to check them out, papaearth.ca. And when you see them and when you buy from them, you can use the code word FATSOMEAT to save yourself $10 on a small box or $20 on a big box. What is Papa Earth? Papa Earth is locally sourced meat, fish, poultry, excuse me, Canadian sourced and delivered to your door. Ontario and Alberta so far, and I think they're expanding. Check them out. Don't forget to use the code word, discount code FATSOMEAT. And say hi to Julian over at papaearth.ca. That's it, folks. Episode number 66. I hope you enjoy it. Damian Lucenda, put your hands together. Lily, take it away.
Fatso Radio, the really great podcast show.
Fatso Radio, the really great podcast show.
So get your butt and get in your chair.
Don't eat your nails and don't pull your hair.
We'll talk about chicken or talk about steak.
We'll talk about fat, for goodness sake.
Fatso, the really great podcast show.
Fatso, our very first podcast show.
Hey everybody, welcome to Fatso Radio, episode number 66. And tonight I have a special guest, another special guest, a longtime friend from way back in Sault Ste. Marie, from way back when we were kids, and we'll talk about it in just a minute. But Damian Lucenda, Damian, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure, man. And yeah, let's just recap, Damian. So we basically, right from elementary school, kindergarten, basically grade 1, right? I'm a year older than you. So all the way through, and then high school as well, St. Basil. And then that's where we kind of went our separate ways. But yeah, so you grew up in the Sioux, and like you said, you didn't say that, but I'll kind of give you a brief explanation. But I understand you're kind of a European background as well. So same as me, we have a lot of things in common, but mostly from growing up in the Sioux, we have a lot of things in common.
That's right.
Friends and all of that stuff. But like I said, welcome to the show. It's great to have you, my friend.
Thank you. Thank you.
So if you could just kind of explain to people kind of your background, or not your background, but when we're talking about the gun debate, or we're just talking about guns in general, that's kind of the episode or the topic we're going to talk about today. I want to kind of give people kind of your, not necessarily your background, but of course your background, but your perspective. Yes, where you're coming from, right? Are you a hunter? Do you love guns? Do you have 50,000 guns in your house? Do you have moose in the back? And everything. So, because a lot of times that's the assumption, right?
That's right. It is.
So I want to let you go, but thank you again.
All right. Well, I'm not a gun owner. I haven't owned a gun. In fact, I've only fired guns a few times in my life when I was in cadets in my teens, and just recently at the range. I don't hunt. My father used to collect old World War II rifles. But besides that, it's not about the guns. It's just about freedoms. And they're being stripped from us, especially right now during a crisis, and that's not right.
Yeah, that is interesting, because even from to give you my background, like I said, I like guns. I think they're cool. I think they're useful, of course, for hunting or what have you. But I also think that like I said, I haven't used them much, but I want to use them. But I also am concerned about the freedom idea. I'm like, well, what's next, right? And my understanding is that the gun laws in Canada are actually very, very good. And I want to go over that as well, kind of as a review for everybody. So my understanding, please someone correct me if I'm wrong, and I'll have buddies that will maybe jump in or correct me later. But my understanding is that, first of all, you have to have a license. You have to get a test, right? Take a course.
You do. You have to take the course, a full day, 2 full days, 8 hours a day, and $400 for the first restricted or non-restricted firearm.
Exactly. And a non-restricted firearm is basically a long gun, like a rifle or a shotgun, right? And to tell anybody, a rifle has a maximum capacity of center fire shot, so like a big rifle, a big bullet rather, that would do a lot of damage. The ones that are used in a lot of these shootings and things like that, there's a maximum of 5 magazine or five
rounds per magazine.
Rounds per magazine, exactly. So the idea that you can have 50 rounds. That's against the law anyway, right, in Canada.
That's right.
Not only that, fully automatic weapons are against the law. So again, the non-restricted is rifles, shotguns. Restricted,
Right.
which is another course, another test, more money, right? A next level license,
That's right.
and that's for handguns, right? And then what else would I guess be considered a restricted weapon? But any other long guns? I don't think there's that many rifles that would be a. I'm sure there is some out there, but
I'm
for
sure
the
there's
most part, it's
something.
handguns. Yeah, for the most part,
That's
it's
right.
handguns. And then my understanding is that anything that's a fully automatic, right, or anything that's considered a military assault, truly an assault style weapon, is a prohibited weapon, and they've been prohibited literally since 70s, I think, late 70s.
Late 70s. That's right.
Exactly. So my big concern, I'm sure one of your big concerns too, is that how this is presented, right? This is thrown into us, to the people through the media, like, hey guys, we're going to fix the problem. We're going to change the law. We're going to make it strict, more strict than it already is, and it's going to fix it. And to me, it just seems political.
Well, this is the way the governments work, right? They come up with a problem or they have a crisis, and we've had a couple crises lately. And when they have that crisis, they take full advantage of it. So they know that there was a tragedy here, and that there were, it was the biggest mass murder of Canadians in history. But none of the guns were legal. They were all obtained illegally, and I don't even know what to say. I mean, he also the murderer also started fires and killed people in other ways, and we can't. There's no way of protecting people in every single instance.
Yeah, you're right. Like you said, so on the first note is that the guns are illegally, obtained, right? And which means that they're not registered, they're not obtained by illegal gun owners. So what is this law going to do? Nothing.
It's going to punish the people who are following the rules, the rule followers.
Because no law, no matter how much you strengthen it, will affect the criminals. I mean,
That's
like,
right.
you're breaking the law anyway to get a handgun, because you're not going to want to get it registered. You're not going to go through the process to wait, take the course, get registered, to have a handgun, call in. And that's the other thing, a restricted handgun. You got to call in, get your permission to transport it. I can do all that and go commit a crime.
Transport, you need references. They need to call references. If you had an ex-wife, you better be good friends with that ex-wife, because if they say no, you're not getting one.
Yeah, you're right. And it's like, from my understanding, or from my experience as well, and I know a fair amount of gun owners, right? I mean, I wouldn't say they're paranoid, but they're very, very particular. They're among the safest people I know, right?
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Not only because they're educated about it, but they have to be. They know that they have dangerous weapons. Like, cars and vehicles, I made this analogy the other day that a school bus is dangerous. It can be. The driver of that school bus, you have a lot of responsibility on your hands, and a lot of people I know have driven bus or have ridden buses our whole lives growing up. And what is there, 70 kids in a bus,
That's
right. In the wrong hands, that bus can go over a cliff. And I know people say, oh, it doesn't happen. Yes, it does.
It does happen. It absolutely does happen. And I mean, you can make that argument with anything. You can make it with drinking and driving. I mean, personal example, I lost my little sister to a drunk driver a few years back. Yeah. We can't ban alcohol. No. We tried it, didn't work, made things worse. And we can't ban vehicles. It's just, it doesn't work. It doesn't make sense.
And I think as painful as it is, the answer always seems to be education. It's painful. It's painful, but the answer is always education. It's like, you need to educate, you need to have options, you need to.
You're right with the education part, but one of the things that I've noticed over teaching for the last 20 some years is that there's been a real focus or a shift, especially when talking about history. So we used to teach history, and now we don't teach history at all. We teach civics. We teach obeying the government, because the government knows what's right for us, and we believe our history is just what the government tells us. So it isn't true. A lot of the stuff we've been taught isn't true. A lot of the stuff I learned in high school, even in university, a lot of it wasn't true. It's based on false knowledge or fake news that was installed a long time ago before we could even understand that it was fake news.
You're right. Yeah, fake news isn't new by any means, right? It's propaganda. It's spinning. It's selective cherry picking on studies. Well, like, I mean, like I was saying even before we started recording, one of the reasons why I named this Fatso Radio is because it's holy shit, we were wrong about fat. What else are we wrong about? Fat, so what, right?
We're wrong about anything and everything that can be possibly made a profit from in our capitalist society, right? So we know things aren't right for us, and we're told, buy this sugar-free crap, buy this, that, the other thing, and it's for a profit. It's not for our health.
Yeah. You're right. Well, and it's like it goes on to the idea that it's not a healthcare system; it's a sick care system, really,
That's
right? Um,
right.
it's true. And back to the guns thing. So, like, not so. I mean, like you said, you have personal experience with the tragedy and other senses, right? Where I mean, really, and then you're not gonna take out. You can't take out all the cars. Nobody would suggest take all the vehicles. No one would suggest take all the alcohol. So right there, why would you just take all the guns? And then the other thing that I hear oftentimes is, well, you don't need it. Well, you don't need it. Well, if we start talking about the needs, this really gets me mad, right? Because I'm like,
That's right.
do we need that poison that's on the shelves that has made us all sick, or that makes us not only sick, it makes us depressed, makes us angry,
Well,
but we
think
have
about
freedom.
what are our actual needs? We need food, water,
Clean food,
shelter,
water, yeah.
love. And our food isn't food.
No.
So, I mean,
Yeah.
everything else is just a want.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
we can't start denying people their wants, or we can, but it's not going to go well. It never has in the past.
Yeah, it's a slippery slope, right? Like I said, once you start, and that's I mean, I made a Facebook comment or post the other day or a couple weeks back, something about, you know, how easy we can lose our freedoms. I got a big mixed bag of comments in there. People are, oh, what are you talking about? Are you suggesting we protest? No. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying we, ignore the social distancing. None of that. I'm not saying that. I'm saying let's just keep our eyes open, because
Let's learn. Let's learn.
this has happened before.
Let's look at the numbers. Let's look at more than one source. Let's stop relying on CNN, NBC, Fox News, because we all know it's all owned by the same six corporations anyways, with the
Yeah.
same agendas for us.
Exactly. And with like you said, with the gun thing, is that it's so easy to, I mean, just throw a narrative here, throw a narrative out there, right? Paint the picture of guns are the problem. Although there are so many gun owners all over the place, right? Once you start counting, you realize they're all over the place, and so little gun crime, so
That's
little
right.
registered and legal gun crimes, right? And the fact of the matter is that if you're going to, every gun crime that happens, no matter what city you are in, any city that's banned guns, I mean, the laws are stricter. It's almost the opposite. I think
Well,
Chicago's the highest.
look at Chicago.
Yeah,
Chicago is prime example. They have a murder rate that's higher death rate than Kabul in Iraq.
yeah,
Insane.
it's
And
crazy.
that's a democratic city that has the strictest gun control laws. But let's be honest.
Yeah, and the richest
That's
country in the world,
that's right.
supposedly.
Yeah.
But you're right. So it's like I said, it goes back to the idea that it's, well, quite frankly, it's a mental health issue,
It
right?
is.
So
Absolutely.
and a mental health issue is not going to get fixed by a law. You can't legislate people better. You can't legislate people
Well,
to be happy.
you look at the UK, for example. They don't carry weapons, and what are you having? Stab sprees. And yes, less people are getting stabbed, but you can't ban a kitchen knife. You can't ban any of that.
No.
And they're still going to find out ways to kill people if they want to. They're driving trucks or trolleys or whatever,
Yeah.
and if they want to, they'll do it.
Exactly, and that's something that needs to be talked about as well. It's the idea of premeditation. If somebody premeditates, that means they've planned it all out. You can't prevent them. You can
No,
make it difficult because, like laws, like registrations, like we do have, like a waiting period, like references, right? All that stuff. But you can't stop. You can't prevent someone from having, quite honestly, a hateful feeling,
and
or
you,
yeah, you
the
can't.
other thing that I find really, really hard is when you see online and people say, "Well, what are you going to do?" Well, the military, what are you gonna fight them with? They have jet fighters and they have warships, and I just shake my head because again, knowing that we don't teach history anymore,
Mm.
kids don't understand. They don't know what the French Resistance was. They don't understand that
Yep.
an insurgency won the Vietnam War, and it was just farmers with rifles,
Yeah.
and they repelled the strongest army in the world. We've seen Afghanistan go on for years and years and years, and we've lost friends. Do you remember Master Corporal Scott Vernelli?
I think so.
He
Yeah,
went
yes.
over and
Oh,
he didn't
yes,
come
of course.
back.
Yeah.
It's a sin. And
It's
the thing is, we can't win those kinds of wars. Asymmetrical warfare it's defeated the U.S. multiple times. It's funny too when you look at everything that we grew up almost idolizing. Star Wars. Who did we cheer for? We always cheered for the rebels, the bad guys, the good guys, the underdogs.
Yeah.
And again, you
Cowboys.
still kind of, I think people really, really see, especially in the States, that They want to be seen by themselves as rebels or fighting the system and fighting the man. And I think that's part of their gun culture, and I
Yeah.
think that's part of our gun culture.
It is. You are. I mean, we're in many ways we're kind of a microcosm of or a small version of the U.S., but in a lot of ways we are a little bit different. But like we were saying before, in a lot of ways, I think that we are more alike than different. First of all, we're more alike than different to everybody in the world, especially someone who's on our southern border, especially someone who shares the same language, shares the same media, shares the same education system for the most part, right? The healthcare,
Mm-hmm.
little different things, but for the most part, we have a very similar society. So of course we're very similar, and like we were saying earlier, I personally, and I haven't really realized this a lot in the past, but I'm starting to realize more. We should owe a lot of our freedoms. We should owe almost all of our freedoms, right, to the U.S. and to that mentality of being on the forefront of the pioneers of freedom, right? They pushed it. They made
And,
sure.
and not only did they push for freedom and they secured our freedom, they've held Canadian freedom since World War II. We haven't had any need to really defend ourselves because we relied on the United States military for that.
Exactly, and that partnership and the alliance that we have, the brotherhood, sisterhood that we have with the U.S. Like we were saying, that's probably the longest standing alliance in history, right? We share the longest border. So like I said, we have very similar cultures, and we really need to thank them for things like this because they are on the forefront. Like, so if they're going to lose something, or if we, you know what I'm saying, if they lose something, then we're going to lose it for sure, right? And like I said, it's in their constitution. It's a right for them. It's not for us. It's a little different. So for us, it's really just a privilege.
The other thing is, I question the timing of the government. Obviously, if there's a crisis, they can get done what they can get done. In a minority government, without any debate, that's not right.
No.
But if you also look at what's coming down the line, so we have COVID-19, and eventually, and I'm going to be able to be allowed to go back into my classroom. I'm sure that one of the rules will be I will have to take a vaccine for a disease that has a cure rate of 99% with your own immune system. And I'm sure I'll have to do that. I don't want mercury. I don't want the poisons in my body. And when you start researching Bill Gates and what he's done with his RFID chips and everything else, it looks like that taking those guns away is a precursor to more things coming. Maybe I'm just being paranoid.
Well, like you said, I mean, one can argue easily that the timing is just the timing and this happened, so we have to act fast. One can also argue that this has been in the works, but one can also argue that the idea of taking away our freedoms has been in the works, right? So it's also nefarious to think that they've been planning on taking these guns away. But if their plan is an uneducated plan, what's been going on in there? Who are they talking to? Right? If this has
That's
been their
right.
plan to have a shitty plan, for lack of a better term, an uneducated plan, where the average, like I'm not even an avid gun owner, I'm not an average hunter or an avid hunter rather, but I'm educated enough to know what the law is. I know within 2 seconds of what the law is. I'm like, you're really not fixing anything.
That's right.
So the people that are in the ministry, the people that are responsible for going to university for 100 years and doing this shit, and they should know better. They should be saying, well, Mr. Prime Minister, we're wasting your fucking time here. They should be saying that. Someone should be saying that. So is everybody sleeping? I think they are.
I think they are. I think it's not that they're sleeping. I think our education system has failed us. I really do. It's really when you watch TV from the 70s and the 60s in the US, their teachers were telling them to fight the system, to research, to hold government accountable. And we don't do that. We just say, believe what the government tells you. The government only wants what's best for you. It's not that you're a social insurance number that pays taxes on a tax farm.
Yeah, no, you're right. We don't encourage any sort of critical thinking, even, right? Trust the government, the TAM, or whoever's in power, whoever the minister is, whoever's just okay. So I mean, and the idea, and I've always kind of, especially as an adult, I've kind of started questioning the questioning of the idea of everything from health. When I've gone through my own health journeys with the whole fat loss thing, even to health journeys as far as cancer or other things like that. It's crazy because you start questioning everything, and obviously they don't want us to question things, but we need to question things. We were taught by people who question things. The way our society is the way it is because we questioned it.
That's right. You make things better. You find a problem, you fix the problem.
Yeah, and if we stop questioning things, then things go crazy. And a lot of this, I think, has a lot to do with the fact that we've gone so far left. The left was like I mean, the left, the liberal, when we grew up, right, the left was like really center, I thought. And it was like the left, or you were the liberal ones. But now it seems like it's way far. It's like,
It's so far, it's beyond. I mean, again, when I grew up thinking, I'm thinking back, you know, and I never had cable TV. We had the 4 American stations. So you would definitely get more of a conservative point of view. And even watching TV back then, you would, you know, you'd watch much music or MTV and you get more of a liberal view, and most of your views and my, you know, my views would become more and more liberal over time. And there's a lot of good things, you know, accepting other people. That is a wonderful idea. Letting people do what they want as long as it doesn't affect anybody else. That's true freedom. And that's a liberal idea. But liberals don't believe that anymore. Liberals want government to control everything, it seems. Big government is good.
Exactly. I think where they went, or where we as a people went kind of astray, is that we said, well, we want everybody to feel equal, right? But then we also can't offend anybody. Like that's where we went off. That's where we went off the rails, because offending people, first of all, you're not hurting them, you're not killing them, you're not, you know, paying in whatever. You're offending an idea. You have to offend an idea.
The thing is, I can't offend you.
Yeah,
you can only be offended.
That's true.
I can't control your actions.
Yeah, my feelings, how I receive that exactly that data, right? Your information is coming in, and I do what I want with it, right? We've all heard horrible things in our life, right? We've all heard horrible things, and I've even said some horrible things, you know, I'm not proud of, right? It's just life, and you're right. It's like, what was the difference of what I took offense to or not? It's context. It's nuance. It's what did we mean by it, right? And that's why I like these things. Like, what do we actually mean by, you know, when we say gun control, or we're afraid of losing our rights? Back to the gun incident, or the gun issue specifically. I want to talk the idea that, or I want to talk about the fact that this hits home for you as well, right? In your local area, with the recent. So if you can maybe talk about that, and how even knowing that, like that. For a lot of people, I think they want to say, let's ban the guns, but what's keeping you from saying that?
Okay, well, first of all, the point that, yeah, I mean, yes, it's horrible. 22 people were killed. And, you know, I lost a friend, you know, Constable Heidi Stevenson. We have that connection. I play hockey with Dean Stevenson, her husband. My daughter plays on the same hockey team as her daughter. And, you know, it's absolutely horrible. It's a tragedy. The reality is, though, that having laws on the book and banning rifles wouldn't have made a difference at all, because his guns were not legal. And the thing is, like I said, some people were killed with guns and others were killed in other ways.
So what do you say to somebody who says, well, if we ban guns, at least there'll be less guns on the street?
Well, it's not necessarily true, because when marijuana was illegal, there was a lot of marijuana on the street. It was actually quite easy to get, and it's actually probably harder now to get black market than it is, obviously. But it's not going to make a difference. You can, if somebody wants the weapon, they're going to get a weapon, and if they can't do it with one sort of weapon, they'll find another way to do it.
It's true. And actually that comparison to marijuana real quick is, I never really thought of it, but it makes sense. It's like, what did we do? We legalized it to fix the marijuana issue.
That's right. Well, the thing is, if everybody had guns, your house wouldn't get broken into, or at least the burglar would give pause. But now, well, they don't have guns. I know they don't have guns, so I'm going to go in and I'm going to assault and take or do whatever I want to those people.
Yeah, exactly. Those two things are two ideas that I think about when you say that, because one, if the government, oh, thanks, the criminal's basically saying, thanks, you cleared out all my whatever opposition now. But on the other hand, it's like, well, so you've also disarmed your people. So let's talk about that. I mean, the first step in full tyranny, right? I mean, people think I'm crazy sometimes, or I'm a tinfoil hat, whatever, or it's extreme. But we need to talk about the extreme, because it never gets talked about.
I know, like, the whole conspiracy thing, but the whole idea of conspiracy was created to make people not question it. Exactly. So the thing is, like, it wasn't a conspiracy that Stalin disarmed all of his people, that Pol Pot disarmed all of his people, that Tito disarmed all of his people, that Hitler disarmed all of his people. I mean, we've seen it over and over again. Once they take the guns, then they can do whatever they want. There's no opposition. Yeah, and I'm not saying that our government's going to do that to us, But I don't know the world that we're going to live in 5 or 10 or 20 years, or the world that my kids are going to live in. And I would hate for my children or my grandchildren not to be able to defend themselves because I dropped the ball and gave up their future rights.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing, like, and that's why, like, we use the example of the Americans that, you know, they're at the forefront of this, and, you know, they, you know, basically, they're a good example to use, like, take the guns away. You won't take the guns away from them. You just won't, you know, and you shouldn't, right? That's the thing. It's all about, like we said, education, responsible gun ownership, like anything, any kind of ownership you have over anything, you should be responsible. A car,
That's right.
alcohol, marijuana, what have you. Like I said, and then the idea that even if someone were to say, well, let's get rid of all the guns, right? I don't know the numbers offhand. I wish I had a Jamie like Joe Rogan has, but there must be some very easy to pull up numbers to show, like, where are our guns coming from? They're probably coming mostly from the States.
Well, they are.
I mean,
And
most of the
actually,
manufacturers.
manufacturers and government manufacturers and black market manufacturers. And when you look at, I mean, things that people don't even think about, Fast and Furious. When I say that, people think of the movies. That's all they think of. They don't realize that the government was running guns to different gangs and drug cartels in Mexico. I mean, they were supplying them with those guns. They made them in those factories and shipped them to them. And we don't hear anything about it because, well, that was during a liberal presidency. So again, that doesn't really make the news, which is,
Yeah.
it's just that, it's that bias.
Yeah, well, and it's one thing that we don't think about often, but every time our government or the U.S. government, then, you know, Western governments have either invaded or helped the government, they brought arms, and those
That's
arms don't
right.
disintegrate. Those arms last forever.
You know, the thing is, if you look at almost every single country in South America, every single one has been overthrown by the United States and the United States government. So I'm not saying that, you know, the United States, they should have weapons. The United States government should not have weapons. The people should have weapons.
Yeah.
And that's what we really need to go back to, because, you know, I shouldn't say, I mean, we need to have standing armies, especially in the world that we live. I lived in China. I've seen what it's like there. There is still tyranny. There are people who are locked up, their organs harvested to the highest bidder. It's the reality. It's really sad.
Wow.
And I could only live there for a year. It was almost too hard on my heart. There was no freedom. People had to endure horrible things just to survive a lot of times. So I don't want to turn into a communist country like that. We were talking earlier about, you know, maybe not having to work anymore. You know, I think the first 2 weeks of being in this quarantine to show people that, yeah, after you get your rest and stuff, then we get restless and we want to do things. We want to create, we want to get out. I don't want to sit on my ass anymore.
Yeah, that's true. It's almost like it would take a reset or reboot, and then a fresh start to say, okay, what's a real economy look like? What's real trade look like, right? And it's funny, I had this conversation with one of my other friends today, where I'm like, what do you really need? You need food and a roof. That's what you really need, right? And then everything else is just gravy. Everything else is stress. Now we're learning all these extra dance things, and it's great. Dance and hockey and all this stuff is amazing, extracurricular, and it teaches us everything. But everything that we put our kids in, and I'm starting to realize, and everybody else is realizing, every extracurricular that we put our kids in, I could just be doing that. That's what our parents did. I didn't go in every.
That's right.
We had so many kids in our families, right? We didn't. What did you have? 15 or so?
How many? 9 is 10.
Number 9 and 10. There you go. But yeah, so like, and you know, it's a different time, right? And people say, you know, it was a better time. And it was a better time in a lot of ways, right? Families were together more. We weren't pulled outside. But the thing is that I think, and it's just kind of going a little off topic, but I think when the society went to a place where both parents had to work, and it's because they had to, right? It almost got hijacked. The idea of like equal rights almost hijacked that idea.
And that's
perfect
totally
timing
what it was
for capitalism.
When the United States looked at the Soviet Union was actually catching the United States in the Cold War. And the reason is they were getting a better GDP because they had their female workforce working.
Wow.
And that's actually, you know, when we really decided to say, okay, we're going to have equality. Yes, it's great that, you know, we've always treated, you and I have always treated women as equals, but society hasn't.
That's right.
And the reason that they have was because, well, we want to increase profits. You know, it's quarter after quarter, you need profit. And that comes down to sustainability. We talk about climate change and problems. We pay a carbon tax. If you pay enough taxes, the environment will get better. And no, it's all about sustainability. And everything that we do that involves government is no longer sustainable
Yeah.
because they're always taking their pound of flesh, and there's always so much fat, and it always ends up costing us more. And we end up supporting people who might not be pulling their weight.
Yeah, that's true. It's like it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and I don't know. I mean, and then what's the answer? I don't know.
It's you know what it's funny because it's sad. And you have these conversations and these thoughts, and especially now that we have so much time to think about, and I get disheartened a lot. And then I just remember that this is just all extra stuff. This is just blah 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 into my ears right now. What really matters, like we were talking about earlier, is love. So you look
Yeah,
at my family like, all right, well, I have what I need. They have what they need.
exactly.
I hope I never have to protect them from anything because I won't be able to, but you know,
Do our best,
everything
right?
else is groovy.
Exactly. Well, you're right, and that it brings it back to, like you said, about love being the answer, and even along with that is like it's the opposite of fear, right? So the idea of scaring everybody to think that okay, we don't want this shooting to happen. And I hate this because it's like piggyback off a bad thing to, right? Like the shooting happened, so let's try and avoid the shooting to get, well, this is one narrative you can take, right? Let's avoid this, so let's ban guns. Well, then every gun owner is going, what the hell? Right?
Uh-huh.
And it's, in my opinion, it's disrespectful because
Oh, it's very disrespectful.
it's using this as as a pawn or whatever you want to call it to pass a law. And not only was it completely illegal as far as I'm concerned, they didn't pass a bill, they didn't do any real process, and that's why one of the reasons why we need to talk about it, because it's in our nature. I understand when people say, what do you need guns for if it's going to save a life? Okay, but that's a very, very superficial look at it, right? It's a very shallow
That's
look
right.
at it. And the more we get into it, the more we realize that it's mental health, right? And then the
That's
other thing
right.
is that it's poverty. Where crime goes with poverty, right? And
Hmm.
and yeah, I don't know. Would you think, what are your ideas on things like the universal basic income? Do you think something like
Well,
that
the
is
thing
useful?
is, I could definitely go for a universal basic income because when you think about the amount of tax that we already pay more than what that universal income is going to be. But the thing that would actually make the real big difference would be a universal maximum wage.
Yeah,
When
it
you
never
think
gets
about
talked
all
about.
the money that's being given to executives and banks, you
Yeah,
know, if you said, okay, you know what, maybe I don't know, that's a good number. $20 million, that's good enough. Who needs more than $20 million in their lifetime? You're going to live comfortably.
yep,
Congratulations, you have $20 million, get your ribbon, get a street named after you, and you retire, move on. And you can keep working for free if you want and give your money to other people. But uh,
yeah.
the
Interesting.
problem is when you have billions and trillions of dollars that are owned by that 1%, by the Rothschilds, by the Rockefellers, by the,
Gates.
the list isn't that big,
Yeah.
but they're sitting on all of it.
Hmm. Well, exactly. And the idea of like, because even the idea in business of perpetual growth, I've always had an issue with that. I understand. I've played the game. I've been in sales. I've been in sport. I've been in in finance and everything. So I understand it, but it's like perpetual. Wait, do you understand what that means? How can you always, always, always grow? Like at
That's
what
right. You
expense?
can't.
What
And I
sacrifice?
mean, we used to laugh, and people used to make fun of the perpetual motion machine. So something that could run forever and ever and ever. They said it would never happen because, well, you can't have energy like the sun. Well, the sun only has a finite amount of energy. It's not perpetual either.
That's right.
And you can't keep trying to wring blood out of a stone. You're only going to get so much,
Yeah.
and then you're going to start breaking things, and everything is broken. The
Yeah.
thing is, the reality is, everything was broken since 2008 during that last crisis,
Yeah.
and we've just been prolonging it, kicking the bucket down the road. And this is as good of a time as any to to do it.
Well, my understanding as well is that now that you mentioned this, that we never really recovered, right? 2008 was just stimulus. You print, essentially printing money to get ourselves out
Print
of debt.
money, take a few zeros off the ledger, and shift some zeros around, and make it all look good.
But that's how are they going to get out of this? Is the same idea?
Well, the thing is, how did we get into it? The thing is, it was all a big Ponzi scheme from the beginning. It was meant to collapse. It only could last a certain amount of time. So how do you collapse it? Well, you either have an engineered collapse or you let it collapse on its own.
Yeah.
Right now, we're partly into an engineered collapse. We have All the small mom and pop shops closed down. The big boys, don't worry about them. They can take care of themselves. They have lots and lots of money, and they've found all sorts of different bailouts.
Yeah.
Mom and pop don't have the access to those lawyers and to the accountants to find the loopholes to get all those millions of dollars to save themselves. And in the end, they're going to take that money, they're going to offshore jobs, and they're going to pad their own executive bonuses.
Yeah. And then all the meanwhile, like we're going to go through interest rates going high. We're going to go through economic, I mean, after, I guess.
Well,
I don't
that's
know.
the thing though, maybe not, because if our economy or our currency collapses, then they can move towards a one world currency. And if you don't follow those rules, then they're going to go to Chinese social systems that will prevent us from doing anything. Like the funny thing
It
is,
can get ugly.
this podcast is probably going to put us lower on the social score. Sorry, man.
Well, that's okay. Yeah, I've been calling myself Fatso for over a year, so I'm sure I'm low on it. I get flagged for inappropriate words. I'm like, I'm spreading love, but no, but that's a good idea, or a good time to kind of bring us back to the idea that, since beginning of time, the hippies, the spreading love, whether it's Jesus, right? Everything, every holy book, every religion has been about spreading love and about love being the answer. And that must be the answer, Damien. Like, what do you think? Like, how do we make it work? Like,
the thing is, whenever you always hear think globally, act locally, and I think it comes down to that. I'm not going to be changing the hearts and minds of people around the world, but I will be doing that with people around me. And as long as I'm passing on love, passing on that message, and educating them, and that's one of the biggest things with me. It's funny because I'm the teacher that's known as the conspiracy theory teacher, because I teach science, I teach physics, and I know a little bit about controlled explosions when I see them. So, when you're fed a story that just doesn't jive, and I don't tell the kids, research this, research that. I just say, look into it. Tell me what you think. This isn't the way things are. It could be this, could be that. What do you think? And the thing is, that's not encouraged. It's actually very discouraged. And it's really sad, because, I mean, in the scientific process, in the scientific method, you need to keep your eyes open, and you need to be open to everything. And we just shut things down on purpose because of that cognitive dissonance. It doesn't make me feel good. It's going against what I've been told my entire life. What do you mean Santa Claus is not real?
Yeah, it's uncomfortable, right? It makes you think, it makes you dig deep. And then a lot of people have issues with drugs, like you said, for the same reasons, right? It's the control. I'm not sure what's on the other side. Well, maybe you need it then, because sometimes you need to see what's on the other side, and like you said, we've been banging the drum as far as, or the hippies, whatever, been banging the drum as far as love is the answer, and it really is, because love is the answer as far as community, right? Because like I said, if you live next door to me and I'm out of bread, I'm going to go to your house. I have a better chance of going to your house than waiting for the government. Like,
that's right.
And all of us
I will
know
take care of anybody and everybody. If our society broke down and the power went out and there was nothing, my freezer would be open, my barbecue would be on the middle of the street, and we'd be cooking it up, and everybody would be fed.
Exactly, and it only takes a few minutes. And this is why one of the good things about an episode like this, that it reminds us that we're only 2 minutes away from remembering where we came from, and we could not have gotten anywhere in evolution. We could not have made it this far. We're a group, society. We needed to be in villages. The idea that it takes a village to raise a child, right? It's still valid. And I hope the grocery stores go away. I do. I
would love to be able to go to a market every day or a couple times to just get real food from local farmers.
Exactly. And then kind of the market idea, pair it up with technology. Great. We don't have to go grocery shopping, like you said, every day or every couple of days. You can go once a month. You have a freezer. You have whatever. We don't need these 100,000 square foot super centers, right? Or
That's
all
right.
these, all that electricity, all that energy, all those people working there. When, like you said earlier, if I have food and I have a shelter, right? That's where all my money. That's where most of my money goes, the mortgage and the food, right?
That's right.
So
the thing is, also the food that we're eating. Like, do I need that orange? Well, yes, I need vitamin C, but I can get it from something else. But when you think about, like, when we were young and our parents were young, if they got an orange in their stocking, that was amazing, because it came from Florida when there was snow on the roads.
It was a gift, a true gift.
Now it's just, we get everything we want whenever we want. It's as my grandfather would call it, the Pepsi generation. It's you use something, you throw it out, you move on, you get whatever you want when you want, instant gratification.
It's true, and we're paying the price, right? We're paying the price in our health for sure. I mean, you go through aisles and aisles in the grocery store, and all of that food, I would, love to just burn up, because it's just it's all garbage, right? And like we were
It
saying
is.
earlier, it goes back to the food that our grandparents ate, our great grandparents ate. Quite honestly, the food that got us here through evolution.
That's right.
It turns out that's the food that's the best for us. Well, who'd have thought? Who'd have
And you
thought
know
that
what? And that's
popcorn
one
started
of
getting?
the another amazing thing about this lockdown is people are getting back to it. They're learning to actually cook. They're not making craft dinner anymore. They're going into their parents' and grandparents' recipe books. And I know myself, I created Sioux style pizza just a few days ago, and
Nice.
it was amazing. And you have the time and you
Yeah.
have the love, and you got it. And I'm teaching my kids how to do it because I want them to be able to pass it on and to be able to do that as well.
Exactly, and it's like within a couple minutes of trying it out, within a couple attempts, maybe if you don't get it right the first time, but it doesn't take long, right? To really tap into our roots. Like I said, all of us come from people who did this in our hands. Like none of us came from a society or a culture that had manufactured. It's just new. So the
And
idea
it's
that
funny too. The other thing about coming from the Sioux is everybody had gardens in their backyard. So
yeah,
one of those things that we want to go back to, and it's our parents did it right.
that's
And
right.
I wish I knew how to do it because my neighbors, they had the gardens. We didn't have the garden. And I'm picking up tips from people where I can and using the internet. But
Exactly.
it's not those tomato gardens that the Brunies had next door for their pasta
Exactly.
sauce.
I was gonna say, I was just thinking about around the bend there where you lived. But you're right, like the old ways of doing it, right? Like the doing it from scratch, and even in the Sioux, right? If you weren't Italian, your neighbor was Italian. But if you weren't Italian, you were Croatian or Portuguese or Spanish or something, right? And the idea that it just kind of proves where we all came from. And even if you weren't
We all
European,
and that's the thing too. The other thing is I hear stories like my uncle talking about when he first got to the Sioux, or his parents got to the Sioux. They pretty much opened their house to everybody and anybody coming from Italy or from Croatia to come live with them to get their feet up, their feet on the ground,
yeah.
and it's still that way today. It's just so warm and welcoming and inviting, and you
Yeah.
don't see that a lot or you don't see it as much as you should.
Yeah, and it's funny because times like this reminds you, or times like this when the government's not encouraging, this community that's in us, it's in our blood, it's innately, that feels weird. So I'm like, oh, this is why I think, and a lot of us are kind of, there's a part of us that are almost ready to say, okay, what are we doing? Or ready to question, even if we're still kind of complying and agree with everything they're saying. There's a part of, I think a lot of us that are saying, man, I need human contact. I need more. Like we
That's
are
right.
totally a tribal
And I think
people.
we're seeing more and more of people waning from this lockdown. I think there was kind of a novelty to it, then there was the scare, the fear, and then the realization that, every day I'm still getting up, it's sunny outside. There's still more organisms in a teaspoon of dirt than there are people on this planet. Why am I afraid? And I'm
Yeah,
afraid because I'm being told to be afraid.
yeah.
That's it.
And
And
that's a
Winston Churchill
virus.
said it. Oh, you have nothing to fear but fear itself, and we are doing a friggin' good job,
Yeah.
instilling fear in people.
Exactly. I mean, and on kind of two elements. I mean, from a virus standpoint or bacteria, any kind of outside foreign, you want to be in the best health you can, right?
Mhm.
And if you're in good health, right, you can fend off a lot of this stuff, and you can defend, your immune system. And it's the same kind of thing from a mental standpoint, right? Like if we're given poison mentally, if we're given this fear, we're gonna get sick from fear. We're
We
gonna be
are.
filled with it. We
We
are
are.
exactly.
Well, what is that sickness? It's rampant now, especially I see it all the time because I'm a teacher. Anxiety. That's fear. And it's
Exactly.
being pumped into us. And it's the amount of students that I have with anxiety is it's unreal. It's through the roof. I
Wow.
have, students who will not get out of their bed. And it used to be a rare thing.
Very rare.
One a year. And now I have at least one kid in every single class. They're not coming to
Wow.
school. There's too much anxiety.
So that's weird. That's weird because, like you said, I mean, we had anxiety. I mean, we didn't call it anxiety. Probably we just, I don't know. We were just, well, maybe we didn't
This
have it, but
was growing
nervousness
up.
or
It was part
energy.
of
Yeah,
growing
it's just
up.
life, right? It's just, yeah, learning the ropes, flax of life, I guess. But also, like, I mean, there's a lot of elements to that, I guess, right? The idea that we don't have as much support as we should. The idea, like you said, right to the idea of nutrition. What are people eating? I'm the first one to blame myself as well. I gave myself shit for a long time, ate a lot of garbage for a long time, poisoned myself for a long time. So I'm never going to say I'm better than anybody. But the idea is that the truth of the matter is that when you do clean up your diet, you feel different. When you do clean
Oh,
up,
you are
you,
so much different.
you feel completely
I went
different.
on a 3-day sugar cleanse,
Oof.
and that third day was hell. The headaches were insane, but
Yeah.
afterwards, the amount of energy that I had, and the flavor of food that I never realized. I didn't realize that green vegetables could actually taste sweet because my senses had been so dulled by Coca-Cola and chocolate and
Yeah.
all the sweets that I love.
Yeah,
So
that's true. You get kind of tolerant, right? Like a little drug tolerance. And then people, like you said, they go through withdrawal. It's completely a drug. You know, like I said, I'm not up for banning anything, but if we're going to ban any drug, I mean, sugar, processed, especially highly refined, you know, it should be on the top of the list. But like I said, we do, and I want to play back to the idea of freedom, is that we do have to have freedom to make stupid mistakes and
that's
stupid
right.
decisions, even if it's life or death, because otherwise you're not free. It's
And
Benjamin
what's the point
Franklin,
of
right?
living? You're being told what to do. Everything is being engineered and a path being set before you that you have to walk. That's not freedom.
Exactly. I think as Benjamin Franklin says, you know, that he who would give up freedom for safety deserves neither. Something to that effect.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
and I wanna drill that down if I can. Like, what is it like? I know a lot of people, family, friends, half my friends on Facebook. They're really afraid by this. And what are they really afraid of? You think is it just the fear? What is it? What's the fear? I mean, other than what the government's telling them, because there's
Well,
something
the thing
inside
is,
of
so
us.
in the past, think about what we had to fear. You know, when before you had a house, you feared what was outside. You know, wild animals.
Yeah.
Now, what do we have to fear? Well, we have to fear whatever they tell us to fear, but we don't really have anything to fear because we know
It's
our
true.
needs are met.
Yeah.
So,
There's a
but
lot of
here's
food. We have our shelter. So it's like the boogeyman that you need to have a
it.
boogeyman.
The boogeyman motivates a lot of things. You know, when you look at Edward Bernays, he was the nephew of Sigmund Freud,
Okay.
and he's the father of modern day propaganda. And the way he did things, he understood the way the brain works. He understood that fear is a great motivator. He realized that he could get women to smoke cigarettes by associating it with voting rights and double the amount of people who smoke cigarettes in the United
Yeah.
States. The amount of, you know, he wrote the playbook for the Nazi Party, and that playbook is still in full effect today. And you know, all of our media advertising is based on Edward Bernays. There's a really good BBC documentary called The Century of Self.
Okay.
And the very first episode, it's incredible. People need to watch it. They'll wake up. They'll realize. They'll see what's actually going on.
Yeah. Well, and that's the idea. Like you said, fear. I mean, people don't fear of the unknown, but also, I guess if you're so used to the government telling you what to do, and then someone like me or you says, "Hey, you should be questioning stuff." It's like, even if they want to, now there's fear of that.
That's
Right?
right. What's
Like,
going to happen if I do question? That's right. And like I said, that social system in China, you spit on the ground, you're never going to go on an airplane again. If you jaywalk or you call a politician out on something, goodbye to your freedoms. Your kids aren't going to schools. And that's the way their schools work there. So they don't have names of schools like we had St. Basil. They have Beijing #1 school, Beijing #50 school. If you go to #1 school, you're going to become an engineer or a doctor. If you go to number 50, you're going to be sweeping the street.
wow.
And it has everything to do with who you know and the whole social credit system. It's not about making you a better person. It's about making you a person who follows the rules
Client.
when you have to, and breaking the rules when they tell you to.
Yeah. So it's not even it's not coming from a place of righteousness even, or
No, not at all.
it's just control and
Absolute control.
yeah, that's pretty crazy. And like you said about the whole idea of, you know, once they force us from fear, things like the vaccine, right? Oh, now we found this vaccine. Because even Trudeau, Prime Minister Trudeau's even said a couple of things that have worried me. Like, well, I think he said this, where we're not going to feel safe until the vaccine's out. Really?
Until we have a vaccine, exactly.
I feel safe when
And
I feel safe. You don't tell me when
that's
to feel
right.
safe. And I think I don't think a lot of people have practice in saying that. And sometimes going through personal traumas or health issues or, you know, crazy things makes you realize you got nobody except your family and your friends. Mr.
That's
Trudeau
right.
is not going to save our lives.
He doesn't care about you. Never has.
It's
Never did.
almost not even his definition of his job. You know what I
No.
mean? It's like, first
No,
of all, it's not a job meant for
he
anybody.
is he is the face of the corporation of Canada, and that's what he is. And Canada, like any other company, needs to have quarterly profits.
Yeah.
And that's every country is just another corporation.
Yeah. And you're right, because yeah, I mean, at times like this reminds me, and I don't want to be like hyperbolic and then get people all worried up, but like when they say the people have the power, right? They absolutely do have the power.
We
And
do.
times like this, it proves it, because why else would you be wanting to take the guns away from law-abiding citizens unless you're
The
worried about our
thing
power?
is, the thing is,
Or is
they
that not
haven't
it?
thought out the plan anyways,
Yes,
because
bullshit.
sure, you take away the guns from the people and you can do that and disarm me. But the reality is that that thin blue line out there, they're still people, they're people in my community. Those police officers are still going to probably protect us from tyranny from the government. So maybe you don't need guns. But again, you never know. Maybe it's not my own government that I have to worry about. Maybe it is a Chinese government or an American government, or who knows. But again, it doesn't matter if um, if we have a different way to protect ourselves.
Yeah.
We should be able to protect ourselves. We should not rely on anybody for anything. We
Yeah.
have all the opportunity, we have all the tools. Then you can ban a gun. Ban a gun. I'll print one off. All the instructions are online. That's all I need is a 3D printer.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, I mean, exactly. And it's like, yeah, I mean, the idea of like to ban guns, or it's, I don't know. I mean, how do you ban violence, right? How do you ban, how do you ban the idea to hurt
I've got a
somebody?
good start.
Yeah,
Everybody that's showing us how to be violent,
yeah,
and it starts with our governments, then you could stop that. It's funny too, because a lot of times we like to equate some sports with violence, but it's not violence. I mean, yes, hitting each other and stuff, but we're not killing each other. It's sport,
that's right.
and there is a line.
Well,
But
and the
that line
intent,
doesn't.
right? Well, intent behind it is everything. I mean,
That's right.
an action may appear to be violent by looking outside, but if it's part of the sport, I mean, look at MMA and all this stuff. These are sports, right? These are the life and death situations, but this is agreed upon situation. This
That's
isn't
right.
an
And if
act of
I get beat
oppression.
up in the ring, well, that's a lot different than getting beat up in a farmer's field in the 1700s.
Yes,
I didn't
exactly.
agree to that. That's violence.
Yeah, and it's a lot different than being oppressed by your government saying, "Okay, we're locking you up now," and turning
That's
on
right.
your neighbors and then crazy ideas, right? Yeah, it's very different, and even aside from the idea of protecting yourself, because not to forget that idea. I mean, our own real personal freedom, real sovereignty to be able to protect ourselves should means whatever needs necessary, right? You can protect yourself with as little means or as little
Yeah.
force as necessary, right? But like the other idea too is that even if you're not going to use guns for protection, like you said, the next step as far as, well, if they can take away something as valuable, right, and as valuable to our sovereignty as guns, then anything else is easy to take away. Everything else is
Well,
completely
the,
easy.
the next
Now
thing
I
I
can't
think
even
about
force
is,
now.
well, think about the way we live. We all live in suburbs, in houses in Canada. We're all spread out. And that's not the reality of most of the world. It would be probably a lot better if 30 million Canadians were in two cities that were close to each other. When I was in Beijing, that was close to 20 million people. The city right next door was Tianjin, that had another 15 million people. And they all lived in apartment buildings. Well, what's to say that they can't take away our property? Because really, it isn't our property. It's just a lease from the banks and from the government. And if they want to take your property, they can anytime.
Yeah,
It's mostly just a smoke and mirror show.
it's true. Well, when it comes down to it, the piece of paper that the government gives you is only as good for as long as they want to valid or warrant, like,
You know,
honor it.
it was funny. I had some. I don't know if they were. I don't know if they were Jehovah Witness or Mormon, but they came. They came to the house, and I'm the type of person who likes to invite them in, just have the conversation, maybe open an eye or something. And he started talking to me about authority and power, and he was telling me about how I don't have any power. And I said to him, no, that's not true. I have all the power. Nobody has any authority over me. And he said, well, what do you mean? Well, the police have authority over you. And I said, no, they only have authority over me if I let them have authority over me. I always have a choice. And we give our power away. We always have a choice. That's what it comes down to. And if we don't stand up, I mean, this is our choice. And people might be making a choice, and people can make the wrong choice. Hopefully, we'll have a chance with another government to undo that. It's not likely, but who knows?
Yeah, I guess that's a slippery slope too. Like we were saying, like, so not only is once it's kind of in there, it's hard to change things, but what's the next thing that comes down? Because if they affect, I mean, so here, let's just play this out, right? They put this new ban in, which effectively doesn't really do much. It does gets rid of some guns that aren't any more dangerous than other guns, so I don't know why, but it doesn't really make anything safer. So if they want to take this next, say hypothetically 6 months down the road, they say, okay, we're getting rid of all handguns. There's a lot of deaths in Toronto because of handguns, which there are, which they come from the U.S., or which they're all illegal anyway. But in their action, they say, I want to ban handguns in every metropolitan area. That's probably coming. So Toronto, Vancouver, or wherever. And but so then there's more businesses they're putting out of business, right? Gun clubs and like I said, there's revenue and all this. But is that going to be safer? Well, again, the handguns used for crimes aren't coming from law-abiding citizens like you and I.
That's right.
So no, that's not going to do anything. The next step is going to be, we're going to just get rid of hunting altogether. Let's get rid of hunting. The government knows best for you, right? Not only are they pushing fake meat, Lord help us, but the next step is going to be, it's best for you to eat the Soylent Green or whatever it is, human food, right?
Yeah, and then, the thing is, though, too, the government has not been good with the environment. So telling people that they shouldn't be hunting wild game is not going to be doing wonders for our environment. We need to have some sort of balance. We have to take out some deer.
Yep.
We have to take out some moose.
In fact, we're learning that the wild game, right, or even if it's farmed like wild, so the grass-fed or the more natural, sustainable pasture raised, that's better anyway, right, than the factory farm, which we know already. So let's encourage that, and like you said, it's needed. People that are, and that's why hopefully Jamie will jump on next couple of days or something. But people that are in the know as far as M&R, natural resources, as far as animal balance, right, and sustainability, they know that you have to take out a certain amount of animals every year. You have to maintain the population of the predators and the prey, and this is all a delicate balance. That if you just say let's let all the animals out and let's stand all hunting, let's stop all cow, there's going to be just millions and millions of animals just died, and then other populations go out of balance, right? It's so easy to just have this narrow thought of like, well, I don't like guns, they scare me. Well, sure, lots of things scare me, right? And those other memes I've seen, but like my freedom doesn't end where you're afraid, or your fear doesn't impede on my freedom, or something like that.
Your freedoms, that's right. Yeah, and it comes down to that. It just comes down to liberty. Live and let live. If I'm not going to be affecting you, you can't be affecting me. And I find that, again, it's one of those things that the left has not learned, especially with the identity politics that they have today, and wanting more control over everything. It's a fake narrative. It's a fake left right, because really there isn't a left right anymore. We've gotten rid of everything. We have everything in one complete little box, and if you're outside the box, you're getting censored.
Yeah, exactly. Like we're bouncing from the left and the right, but it's essentially the same box, a different color.
That's right. Sides. It's you see it everywhere. I mean, what was it? Game of Thrones, Tyrion Lannister. When you cut out my tongue, you're not proving me a liar. You're proving that you're afraid of what I have to say. And you're seeing that a lot. Even this whole gun argument, you can reach certain people with this, but the amount of posts that you actually get are being cut down. They don't want to have too much in the news about anything in any certain cycle if they're not in control of it.
Yeah, and like other things, it's coming to a head, right? The stronger this voice gets of our people fighting for freedom or fighting for liberty, the stronger it's going to be oppressed, and it's coming to it. It's both sides are coming, and like you said, there is censorship everywhere. So we've got to keep on spreading the word, and I think that something like this, where it's me and you, people that grew up with us are going to listen to this. People that know me, my mom will watch this.
And that's the thing too. It's funny because you hear all these things on TV about who the next president of the United States is going to be. It's definitely not going to be Donald Trump, because it definitely wasn't going to be him in 2016 because there's no chance at all.
No chance.
And listen, they're using the same playbook, but they're hoping that this time their algorithms and manipulation of YouTube and Facebook and Twitter are going to change things. But the reality is, we're not as dumb as they thought we were, and a lot more of us are waking up every time that they put something and we catch them with, and we put it online, we put it on Facebook, and we make one meme out of it. People don't forget that stuff. When you think about propaganda, again, back to Edward Bernays, his idea to make the Germans look bad during World War I was to put babies on bayonets and say that the Germans, the Germans were bayoneting babies, and they made all this propaganda out of it, and it wasn't true at all, but they knew it worked. The thing is, now we learned that lesson, and we're using their own tactics tactics against them. So
Exactly.
it's a good time to be alive that way.
Well, and you said this really shines a light on how shitty in one area our education system is, our health. We forget our history this short. Like it hasn't been that long since we just went through this, right?
Like Joe Rogan says, that was just like one person ago.
Yeah, it really was, right? And it was one person ago that millions of people were affected, and now we all of a sudden trust, this one person again. And that brings up another point to me that even the even the idea that we're all following, even that is fake news, right? Because a lot of us are waking up. A lot of guys like me and you, a lot of people, now we're talking with our wives, talking with our kids. I mean, my 9-year-old is more aware than I was when I was 21, for God's sakes, right? Because
That's right.
the internet, we're sharing information. You can block things, but you can't block the ideas.
The thing is, like, there will still be people saying, put on your tinfoil hat or you're crazy. But the reality is, I've seen a lot of people wake up. I'm one of 10 kids. My brother-in-laws used to laugh and make fun, and now they're like, oh, no, 9/11, yeah, that wasn't, what we were told wasn't exactly what happened.
Exactly.
People, I don't know what happened. I don't know all the wild, conspiracy theories, but I do know that it's not what we were told.
Yeah.
And I get that there's some things that the government can't tell us, maybe for our own safety, or maybe it's just to keep their own ass safe, cover their own ass. But
yeah, and like you said too, it's the perfect time to combine the conspiracy theories or the conspiratorials with, like you said, love. Because really, what comes down to it is, like, we know the world. There's many conspiracies around the world, but it's just a matter of being honest. It's time to be true with ourselves. It's time to really question things, not in a defiant way, because a lot of us have this resistance to be defiant. We like to fall in line, and I understand that, and because it is, the least path of resistance, right? Path of least resistance, rather, but a lot of us are questioning, a lot of us are waking up, and a lot of us are hopefully going to use something like what we're doing here to really understand that we're just two guys that absolutely do love our neighbors.
We love freedom,
guns
we
are
love
no-nos.
justice. We love each other, and we just want to be able to love and protect each other, and not bother anybody else. Live and let live.
Exactly, because true freedom, or true, happiness in life would be not in a cage, not being oppressed, right? I mean, and everybody too. You always hear at the end of the day, when people are on their deathbed, what do they regret? Spending more time with their family and their friends. They never regret, or they regret not spending enough time with their family and friends. They don't say, "I wish I would spend more time at the office."
I really regret that I didn't get an extra $10,000 in profit.
Exactly.
That stuff's not important. None of it's important. It's all just stuff, window dressing.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing too, like it's going to be interesting to see what happens as far as the coming months, because when the economy hopefully starts turning around, as far as the stimulus is going to go, where is the economy, where we're going to put our money to. And like you said earlier, some of these businesses aren't going to be around anymore. And it's going to be like the new businesses, I guess, to wrap this up, or not to wrap it up, but to bring it back around, is that we will need to somehow make love and sharing and community, right, a currency of some sort. Not social engineering, I don't like that, but somehow, like, it was a currency before we made money, it seems like, right?
It's almost like you need to get to that utopian, like, Star Trek society where you're doing things just for mankind. We take care of each other, because really the reality is we still do. Now there are some people on the fringes, you still see lots and lots of homeless people, but for the most part here, I'd say most of the homeless problem that we have is due to mental health, and not due to not being able to have. So again, those are things that we need to fix, and we're not putting our money into the right places. We're letting companies poison us. We're injecting poisons into our body. We're killing each other for profit, and it's
exactly. And one would even say that a possible solution, or at least the right path to solution for mental illness, of course, is, like you said, education, but community, right? Community. Even when you're talking about addictions, when you're talking about all this stuff, it's the community, it's a connection with humans. We are better together, right?
Yeah, and I think that's one of the hardest parts too of this social distancing, is because it's, in a way, it's breaking the community. It's actually forcing us apart. But I'm seeing so many of those acts of kindness where you go to Tim Hortons and the person paid for the 9 cars behind them, or around here people are painting their windows with hearts. Nova Scotia Strong putting positive messages on every telephone pole, and people are really picking each other up. And people, we have this thing where you just bake something and you go leave it on a stranger's doorstep.
That's awesome.
Just little acts of kindness, and that's what's going to change the world in the end, really.
Yeah, exactly.
We don't need any of the big stuff.
No, and like you said, the more we rely on our neighbors, sometimes, I mean, necessity is the mother of invention, right? So oftentimes we're going to have to rely on our families to be reminded, or rely on our neighbors to be reminded that the neighbors are our community, and the neighbors are really the kind of the lifeline. And that's the thing, right? When it comes down to it, like, I don't know. It's really hard because you hear the messages from the government, right? You hear that this is what we should be doing. We understand. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. I mean, I guess with schools and everything. But there's one thing that this has proven, or many things. One thing is that you really can't do this alone. You can't do this alone. Even though we're being isolated, this is nice that, like you said, we're connecting. Well, shit, 23 years. I think I did the math. It's been 23 years since we've seen each other. I graduated in '97, so
that's right,
since
98.
then. And so it's been a long time. And and it's reminding us, like you said, we're spending more time with our kids, spending more time with our spouses. It's challenging. I mean, I'll be the first one to say it's challenging. But it's like, it's in a lot of ways, it's almost nostalgic because it feels like the '80s in a way, right?
It does. You imagine, I mean, I still wish that my kids wouldn't be on TikTok or anything else,
sure.
But it's nice that we have rules where there's no technology until, at least lunchtime, and then they can go on their Chromebooks to get their schoolwork done. And we're trying to go back to that, let's go play outside, and getting a lot of dirty looks. And it's really, really funny because I've got 4 kids, and there's no way that I'm keeping them inside. Exactly. And I know you're not supposed to be in groups more than 5 people, but there's 6 of us.
Yeah.
And I don't care. I'm gonna break that rule every day of the year. And if a cop stopped me, I would just laugh at it. Well, maybe not laugh. I'd still be polite, but I'd say, okay, well, if you're going to ticket me. Yeah. But trying to keep us inside, we need the vitamin D. We need the fresh air. Yeah. And we don't need people looking at us. And the reality is, I think, again, that's just all hyped up. The neighbors, they don't care because they're worried about, what are people thinking of me when I go to the grocery store? Oh, no, that person is less than 2 arms length, passing in the aisle. Oh no, they're not thinking about that. They don't care. They're thinking about themselves and trying not to offend people because that's the society we live in. We can't offend.
Exactly. I mean, in general, and to that point as well, generally speaking, people are very compliant. Oh my God. Like, I mean, it can drive by the grocery store and I can see there's a lineup, but my God, there's 500,000 people in this area. So there's going to be a lineup, right?
Absolutely.
And
you know what? I prefer my Costco trips now with the social distancing than when, it was dangerous. You get run over by carts all the time before social distancing. Now I got room to move.
Yeah. Now, I do think one of the I guess nefarious things, those big box things, right? As of course, those big giant corporations. But like you said, I mean, there's nothing that says that we can't go back to. And a lot of people are doing this. We're going back to the farmer down the road. He raises cattle. He raises, whatever, and the vegetables and the fruit. And it's, again, another time to. Yeah, it's just another instance to remind us, like, hey, we're not far away from when we did it. Like,
we're not smarter than our parents. No. Like, our parents weren't smarter than their parents.
Exactly.
And my kids won't be as smart as me, unfortunately.
And we're not smarter than evolution, right?
That's right.
Like,
unless things change, of course, unless our generation can actually turn things around and awaken and realize what's actually going on.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing too, is that when it comes down to it, I think. And when people really talk to it, when you really unpack it, people just want, like we keep on saying, you just want to feed your kids, you just want to protect your family, and you just want to, these days we say we just want to go to work and bring home money, but it's really just to pay for all of that. We don't, like,
that's right.
We're not put on this earth, whether you believe God put you here or the stars put you here, we're not put on this earth to be a slave for 8 hours a day. Not a slave, because that's a terrible word, but
we're
not put on this earth to do that.
Military slave.
I guess so, right? Or it's just, something we've accepted, and it's, it's the norm, and we're not put on this earth to do that. And it's funny, the people who resist that over the years, society has shunned those people a lot in a lot of ways, right? Society looks down on those people as either hippies or whatever, lazy, right? And a lot of times, no ambition, where a lot of times it's like they're so distracted by the bullshit of the world
They're
that
not living. They're not
Yeah,
living.
that's true. That's exactly what it is. I think there's a lot of people kind of have to tap into that. And maybe if things do change, like you said, whether it's universal basic income, which would just ideally pull people out of poverty, that's at least what we want, right?
Mhm.
Maybe that will give people more freedom to do things that will more contribute to society in their own terms, though, right? Because quite honestly, I'll tell you, my mom, I love her to death, and she's like many, many moms. She loves to clean. She'll tell you she loves to clean. She just loves it, right? And
Yeah,
some
I mean it's manual labor, right? Keeps you busy, keeps you moving.
and she's great at it. She loves it, right? Like if I'm good at a certain thing, I like to do it as well, right? So, yeah, I know I can get that, and you know, and it's the reason why we come from bricklayers and carpenters, right? And masonry, and that's why this is the reason why we came here, because we built a society with that stuff, and you know, when we stop doing that, it's fine. We got to do something else with our time, right? With our hands.
Well, that's the other thing too. You know, you notice that the whole 2.3 kids, that's actually not 2.3 kids in Canada anymore. That number's going up. There's a lot more families with 3, 4, 5 kids because they're realizing we don't need the newest iPhone. We don't need all these other things. Like say, well, you have 4 kids. How can you afford that? Well,
Yeah,
I don't pay. I don't have cable. Why am I paying $150 a month for something I don't need, I
yeah,
don't want, and that's going to mess up my family? So
exactly.
it's just you know, you prioritize what you want or what you need. And for us, 4 kids that was the priority. We wanted a big family. So
Yeah, that's great, and exactly like you said, prioritize around everything. I mean, in times like this, it reminds you what's important. Well, what's important is my freezer full of roasts and you know, fish and the staples for when we need. You know, we can make bread, homemade, like you said. Everybody's making bread. Good, because it takes 2 ingredients, 3 ingredients. That's why it's so easy.
you know what?
We
You
never.
can't find flour in the stores. You haven't been able to get flour here in
Yeah,
about 2 months, and yeast is gone.
yeah.
But
Same here.
I
Bulk barn.
was went for a ride today out to a rural place, and they had like just a little convenience store and pizza place out of there, and they were selling the pizza dough or pizza flour, or
Okay.
I guess just the flour for the pizzas
Yeah.
in smaller bags. You know, a little ketchup container worth of yeast, and
Yeah.
making a good profit off of it because that's the only way you can get it. You can't get it in the grocery stores anymore.
Yeah. And
And
people just
we're
panic.
starting to see less meat here too. It's funny because Wendy's is running out of beef, but McDonald's isn't. So it makes you wonder, wait a minute, what is McDonald's made out of?
Actually, I just heard that McDonald's is now opened up to using American beef,
Really?
which normally they haven't. So I don't know if that's true or not, but I heard the rumor that they are, which I'm not a big fan of that, right? I like Canadian beef, and we should be supporting Canadian. In times like
Absolutely.
this,
And again, the FDA is there for sale to the highest bidder. And when, living in the border city, if we had that American chicken, it was yellow and it was greasy and it was disgusting. The amount of crap they pump into it, you know, the antibiotics and the steroids and
well, exactly, your standards are different, and paying different amounts, and yeah, yeah, it's crazy.
you know.
Um, but
Anyways, how do we get there from guns?
yeah, we get there. Well, let's circle back to guns. So back to the whole gun thing, like you said, whether people have experience with guns, whether they don't, whether they have experience with tragedies, like you said, where you know people have lost their lives because of these accidents. Um, I think one of the things I want to kind of hammer down is that these are acts of violence, right? Like you said, these are criminal acts. These are, in my opinion, if you're going to take the life of someone, even if you want to take the life of someone, that's a mental illness situation. That's a
That's
mental
right.
health issue.
You can't express empathy, then that is a big problem. You know that's actually what they
Even if
say
it's
with
temporary, it's mental health.
psychotics. People who are psychotic or sociopaths, they lack empathy. And the funny thing is, when you look at governments, you look at corporations, and you compare them to people under the law, they're people. But if they were, they'd be locked up
Yeah.
because they only worry about themselves and making themselves better, not the rest of the community around them.
Yeah, exactly. And like I said, I mean, most companies, especially if you're a publicly traded company, right? I mean, you're in the business of making money, right?
That's right.
You're not making people happy, right? And if you were, you would be out of business probably. But
That's
I'd say
right.
maybe we can somehow make love or caring, or I mean, I don't know what it is, but we can somehow make it where it's best. Like you said, maybe just one day we'll all realize, or it's not one day, it's gradual. Like you said, people are waking up, but it's just, we got to hit critical mass, right? What is it, 1% or whatever? And I don't know. I guess we're doing what we can, right? Banging
Yeah,
our drum.
again, just slowly do, like we said, think global, act local. Just
Yeah,
love each other, help each other out, and hopefully we won't have to worry about any of those, worst case scenarios, end of days type of stuff. That's, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
It's people have been, again, that's the fear, right? You got to control people with the fear. Go out and buy your masks and make sure that you're putting those masks on and driving in your car with those masks so that every breath you exhale, you're putting carbon dioxide into that mask, and then you're breathing in carbon dioxide and slowly choking yourself from oxygen. I mean, you're washing your hands, you're washing off all the germs that will, eventually build up immunity. You're drying out the skin. It's insane. It really is.
Improper use of gloves. You're using the same gloves all day long. Yeah, I've seen crazy things like that. And like I said, this is a good time to remind everybody. First of all, I'm not a doctor. I'm not giving medical advice, but it is a good time to remind people that our overall health is important, right? Any situation that we go through, whether it's stressful, whether it's physical, we want to be in the best shape we can. Most resilient shape would be a good immune system. Healthy.
And everything's connected. Your brain and your body is connected, and your body can only work if you fuel it properly with the right fuel. Yeah,
I would say in the last connection to that would be community, right? I mean, without that, we're nothing. Like you said, the neighbor next door. I mean, the phrases of a cup of sugar from the neighbor. There's a reason, because we need them. We need you.
That's right.
We need, myself. And like I said, this time, one of the other things that's good is just reconnecting. Like I said, 20 years goes by and I haven't seen your face. You look the same as when you were a kid, buddy. I got to say.
You've lost a little bit.
A little bit of weight. But yeah, like I said, this is connecting us again, and it's bringing us to talk about these things, because we didn't have, our dads and our moms didn't have this, right? They would literally have to go 2 blocks over to see you guys, or, say, have a PTA meeting and wait for this, where we have this ability now, to connect. So
yeah, it's amazing that way.
Yeah. And Damian, I just want to say thanks so much for coming on, my brother.
Well, thanks for having me, Carlo. I really appreciate it. And I really enjoyed myself.
Thanks so much. Like I said, I want to bring you back, and we'll talk about whatever you want to talk about. I mean, once school gets back on board as well, I want to see what it's like to go back in what the new normal is. I mean, we haven't even gone into that, but it's never going to be the same, right? It's going to be transitional.
No, definitely not. It can't be.
Yeah, exactly. And for, I guess maybe the last thing is that a lot of people are saying it shouldn't go back to normal.
Because it wasn't normal.
It was broken.
Not the word for it. Yeah, that's right.
It was abnormal, but it was common and it was accepted, really.
That's right.
Well, thanks again, brother.
All right. Thanks for having me, Carl.
All right, guys. Thanks for listening. We'll be in touch very soon. I love you all.